Does everyone inside themselves on their worst day have a jerk at work type that they might default to?
I'm not
saying
I'm
a micromanager
person.
but if I was on my worst day, it might be that one. Tell me everyone has one.
I think we all do. I really, truly do. I certainly do. I throw myself under the bus in this book a lot. I think the thing is you need to know what your Achilles heel is at work so that you can put steps in place to prevent it from taking over.
Who are the world's most interesting people? And what fascinating, groundbreaking, incredible things can they teach us? In this new series, I leave our Science of People lab to interview my favorite authors, experts, and celebrities for them to share their best people hacks, social skills, and stories. And let me tell you, they have some juicy tips. This is a new series I'm calling The World's Most Interesting People.
Hello, YouTube friends. Today, we're talking about jerks at work, and we're doing it with the amazing Tessa West. Hi, Tessa.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So I want to brag about Tessa for a second. I'm so thrilled to have her on the channel. Tessa West is an associate professor of psychology at New York University, where she's a leading expert on interpersonal interaction and communication. Oh, we have so much in common. She's published over 60 articles in the field of psychology's most prestigious journals and received multiple grants from the National Science Foundation and the National Institutes of Health. She writes regularly about her research in the Wall Street Journal. Welcome officially.
Thanks.
So what I want to talk about today is your book, Jerks at Work. Amazing title. I was like, I need to have this. I need to have this in my mind. You identify 7 types of difficult coworkers. How did you come up with these 7? By the way, I want to read them for everyone. And to get the full description, you have to read the book, but here are the 7: free riders, micromanagers, neglectful bosses, credit stealers, bulldozers, kick up and kick downers, and gaslighters. How did you come up with these 7?
It was actually really tough to narrow it down to 7. I got to be honest. I think the list initially had about 20. And what I really wanted to do was just focus on the types that I felt most people could relate to at some point in their career. Early, mid, or late career doesn't really matter. You come in contact with all of these types. I also tried to pick people that no matter how much experience at work you have, you don't necessarily get better at dealing with these different types of folks. You have to learn the strategies. And I think that's important because people often feel badly that they've been working for 20 plus years and they're still not very good at dealing with credit stealing or, kiss up, kick downing. So this is, the skills that you learn from these chapters are supposed to help kind of anyone at any career stage and just be really broadly applicable to no matter what your job is.
And I love this because this was a myth that you busted, which I was like, relief, which is that only inexperienced people struggle with jerks at work. No, no matter how much experience you have, everyone has these and everyone struggles with dealing with them. That's why you have to learn the strategies. You have to have them in your back pocket.
Yeah, we never get training for this. So I don't know about you, but at no point in my life did I ever take a course on how to deal with people who are a little bit difficult, but not so bad that you can get them fired for it. I mean, we read books on how to have, better romantic relationships and better relationships with our kids to deal with this everyday conflict stuff, but we don't really learn it at work. And I think, by the time we take jobs, we are sort of, really held back and that we can't kind of deal with everyday conflicts. We often just avoid people or hide from them, that kind of thing.
So you made a really good point there, which is a lot of these difficult people are not so difficult that they're obviously going to be fired. That's actually the problem. Right. They're a little bit difficult, or they're sometimes difficult. In fact, this is kind of where I wanted to start, which is, what is a toxic coworker? What are some signs that you know that you have one? Like sometimes I think that people will write it and they'll say like, am I imagining it? Which means you might have a gaslighter, or like, am I crazy that this is a difficult person? So what is a toxic coworker, a difficult coworker, and how do you know you have? What are some signs?
I think the kind of early red flags are that when you try to do your work every day, they're a constant source of kind of background information or cognitive depletion. You can't go about your regular everyday business without having to think about how this person is going to affect you walking down the hall, using the bathroom, getting a cup of coffee, shooting off an email, having a short meeting with your boss. The daily stuff just gets, really infringed upon when you deal with toxic people, and often kind of small ways that aren't on our radar. So if you find yourself thinking about someone at work a little bit too much, preoccupied, feeling uncertain about what's going to happen when you interact with that person, these are all red flags to me that you might be dealing with someone who's toxic.
What'd you say? You said cognitive
depletion. So they soak up all your mental resources. It's like trying to memorize a 7-digit number and keeping it in the back of your mind all day long while also doing your job. That's what these folks do.
Okay. Hopefully we'll have a big banner about this. Cognitive depletion. I've never heard that phrase. And I think that it's really important because when you have those tracks running in the back of your head, it's really hard to do anything else. So that is one of the most classic signs. I want to talk about just a few of the types that I think are most relevant for our people that immediately I was reading and I was like, oh my goodness, I have to share this with my students. Okay. So the first one is a free rider. What is a free rider? And then I want to talk about how we set boundaries with them.
Yeah, so free riders are really tricky people at work. They're the most common type of jerk. They're the ones that take advantage of everyone else on their team. These folks take advantage of conscientious teams full of people who like each other, who get along really well. And they're great at actually finding well-functioning teams and then kind of inserting themselves in these teams and being really likable. So they'll do things like offer to make dinner reservations or sit around and chat and gossip. And so people like them, but they don't do any actual work. And so kind of the most successful free riders get away with just hanging out all day long with the team and never actually pulling their weight.
Okay. So like, I don't know if when you were writing this book, you just felt like, yeah, like I know that. So I agree with you. I think this is the most common type. And what's really hard is that they're often likable. And so you have a lot of, I think when I was reading this section of the book, I was like, this is where you get all the excuses. Oh, but she's so great to have around. Oh, but he's the spirit of the group. That's
right. They're the social glue. We use all kinds of phrases to justify this to ourselves. And so we're really bad about it ourselves. We're really bad at, kind of fishing these people out and pulling them out of our team.
Okay. So you obviously lay out really, really specific action plans for each and every one in the book, which I found so helpful. I actually put a little sticky tab in each of the sections on the strategies so that like, if I have one, I could just flip to it. What are just first step? If someone's like, I think I have a free rider. What's just one step that they can take right now to begin to try to, set boundaries, change themselves? What's one little step they can take?
So the first step you should take is have everybody write down what work they plan on doing and then measure what work they actually did. So where we really see free riders kind of taking advantage of people is when they plan to do work that they then offload to others. And the only way we ever learn this is if we compare and we see the discrepancy between what I said I would do on Monday and then what I actually did on Monday. And part of that is asking people to write down any unforeseen work they did that they didn't plan on. What you see happening is smart free riders will divvy up their work among, say, 8 people. Each of those 8 folks will report doing one small thing that isn't a big deal, but if you add it all up, it adds up to the work of your free rider. And that's how you can often detect these folks early on.
Okay. So that is a very simple, but very important step, right? Like we actually starting to turn some of these meetings, especially I think a lot of free riders happens verbally, right? Like you don't realize that someone's not taking credit or it just got passed. And so even just making sure that there's a note taker at every meeting, making sure that there's someone who's responsible for taking tasks out of emails and putting them into spreadsheets or putting them into task management, like that role needs to be defined. So if that's you or if that's someone on the team, it has to be specifically designated who is taking notes in the meeting and who is pulling tasks from meetings, calls, and emails. That's
exactly right. And the best thing to do is make that a rotating role so that not one person gets blamed for, kind of being the hall monitor. It's also a lot of work. So, you rotate that, every 3 months or 2 months or whatever between team members.
That's brilliant. That's why you wrote the book. That is very brilliant. Exactly. Because you don't want the note taker to be the one that's blamed. Okay. We could talk about them forever, but I want to bring up one other concept that you mentioned in the book that I love, which is social comparison orientation. What is this? And how does it have to do with difficult people? I was like, because I had never heard this phrase before and I found it immediately helpful.
So there are some people who just can't help but compare themselves to everyone around them on every dimension. So we all know these people. They're the ones who, when we all get our bonuses at the end of the quarter, they go around and find out how much each person's bonus was. Where I work at NYU, our social status is determined by how many bedrooms we get in our apartments. So they like to go to people's houses and see who've got nice bedrooms. They'll measure square feet in your office, all these kinds of little things, because they thrive and they're obsessed with comparing themselves to other people at work. And people who are like this, and there's actually a measure you can take to find out how much social comparison orientation people have, they tend to be more likely to do things like kissing up and kicking down, be Machiavellian to get ahead. So they know who their competitors are, and then they know who they need to beat to actually kind of climb up that ladder at work.
So this was in the kiss up, kick down, right? Did I get that right? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I have a quote that I pulled out here. Okay, ready? Kiss up, kick down coworkers have a singular goal in mind: to climb to the top by any means necessary. To get there, they treat everyone who is at the same level or below them as competition. They reserve their good manners for people in charge.
Yeah, they're really the worst.
So this is really interesting because it was funny. I thought that this reminded me also of some of the stuff we talked about in gaslighting, in the sense of like, you'll have someone who's kind of rude to you, right? Like because you're on their level or below them. And then all of a sudden you see them with the boss and they're so nice. You're like, is it just me? Like, am I overly personal about this? So
yep.
Is it fair to say that maybe the first step with this category, if you think you have one, is taking note of how they are with different people? What's like the first step that we can do to not feel so crazy? Because these people make me feel crazy.
You definitely need a reality check. I think that is the best first step. And if you don't have those connections with other people, then you can find someone who's actually a little bit distant from you at work, that isn't your best friend, that can kind of connect you to folks. So I worked in retail for a lot of years, and I found out that my kiss up, kick down in the shoe department was also torturing people in the men's clothing department by stealing their customers, by taking his clients up to clothing and stealing everyone up there. So, I mean, he was quite literally going from floor to floor doing this, but without ever interacting with folks on these different floors, I wouldn't have known that. So I found someone who was pretty well networked and got that information, which gave me a sense of reality, that I wasn't just a whiner, or I wasn't doing something that I wasn't wearing a sign that says torture me. I'm easy to take advantage of at work. But that reality check is critical for your own mental sanity, but also when you need to complain to your boss about the person.
Okay. So that is extremely helpful, is getting a reality check. It can validate those feelings or not, right? Or if you're being too sensitive. Yeah. I also want to make a note here for anyone, if you are a manager or a boss. So yes. I have been a manager or a boss for about 12 years. I hired my first employee 12 years ago. And I've had experiences where I had no idea that there was a kiss up, kick downer on my team because I was the boss. So to me, they were amazing. They were wonderful. And a note, and I would love your feedback on this, is I learned it too late. We actually lost a really, really good employee because they were being kicked down to, and I did not get the warning signs. So for managers or bosses, how can they ear to the ground, see this coming? I missed it.
Yeah. Two pieces of advice. The first is, don't assume that no news is good news. Good employees are actually less likely to complain and more likely just to figure out ways of working around difficult people. The stronger the employee, the more talented they are, the less likely they're actually to tell you to complain, but the more likely they are to leave because of it.
That's
so
what
you have to have short, more frequent short meetings are better than long, less frequent meetings. So even 15 minutes every week instead of 30 minutes every 2 weeks are better. The other piece of advice I have is this: no matter how busy you get, do not hand over the reins to anyone at work to handle communication for you. It doesn't matter how low level the employees that they're communicating are. They could be new interns. They could be people that are kind of outside of your purview. You do not want communication to be 100% mediated through or working through anyone at work. They might not necessarily be a kiss up, kick down, but if they are, you're never going to know it. You need to have direct communication with people.
I really like your advice. And this is remember, do it, which is less frequent, shorter. And I know we all get busy, but this is for anyone, right? Even your colleagues, having those 15-minute check-in meetings, especially if you're working mostly remote.
Yeah.
Do not know what's happening in email, in docs, in tasks. Yes. So I really, really like that. Please take note. Okay. I have another big question here, which is this. I'm just guessing. Does everyone inside themselves on their worst day have a jerk at work type that they might default to?
I'm not
saying
the
I'm
most
a micromanager
person.
but if I was on my worst day, it might be that one. Tell me that's everyone has one.
I think we all do. I really, truly do. I certainly do. I throw myself under the bus in this book a lot. I think the thing is you need to know what your Achilles heel is at work so that you can put steps in place to prevent it from taking over. So for some of us, we get overwhelmed, we really retreat inward and we just like shut down. So those people are going to be neglectful bosses. They could be freeloaders. Some of us get anxious, overwhelmed at work. And so we micromanage, or we bulldoze, we take over processes because it gives us a sense of control. So I think for some of these types, it's really all about knowing what your worst self is when you're the most burned out, overwhelmed at work, dealing with stress at home, and then just planning to deal with that. Not assuming that you can outwit your inner jerk at work, but kind of putting steps in place to prevent that person from coming out and, negatively affecting other people. So I would say, yes, we all have it. I have like all 7 of these, and maybe not gaslighter, but, we all have versions of these lurking deep within. You just have to be really honest with ourselves over what they are so we can plan for them.
Okay. So that's actually where I want to end this video. And I'll ask you, Tessa, if you have any last thoughts. But I think, one, you must buy the book to know exactly what to do with each of these steps. We talked about 2 of the categories, really. There are 7, and there are really specific steps you could take. This is not guesswork. This is a skill that we have to hone and work towards. So please, I highly recommend you get the book. Even if you don't have a difficult colleague right now, at some point, if you're successful, you will. And so you should have it in your back pocket. That's the first thing. And learning about the types. The second thing is I think it's important, if we want to be a good person to work with, we have to identify our difficult tendencies. So that's thinking about exactly as you just said, what are our triggers? What do we do on our worst day? I know for me, when I was reading the micromanager section, I was like, when I feel overwhelmed or out of control, I want to take control, and I get scared and I get worried and I go into a scarcity mindset. And so I know that, and I share that with my team. I'm like, just so like if I'm getting anxious, that's my tendency. And I'm starting to learn that happens in late afternoon, like right before everyone goes home. Right. So that's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not a good time to check email. Right. I've learned if I have that like horrible feeling in my chest where it's like tight and kind of anxious, I shouldn't reply to an email. Like I should just wait and like sleep on it. So starting to realize those internal triggers and boundaries also makes us easier to work with, which is going to make everyone around us easier to work with, which hopefully creates this sense of camaraderie.
Yes.
Is there any other words of wisdom that you have for anyone watching to deal with their jerk at work?
I'd say last minute, think about what kind of ally you want to be. And, jerks at work can't thrive on their own. They need people to help them out. And sometimes they need people to just ignore them. And that's really what promotes them into, just really bad behavior at work. So it's not just about preventing yourself from being a jerk or fishing these people out, but figuring out where you want to be in terms of helping others and preventing this type of stuff from really changing the climate at work. And I talk about allyship a little in the book. There's a quiz at the back on what kind of ally you are that I suggest people read before and after the book, that maybe they can learn a few things to kind of help them improve on that front.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Jerks at work cannot be jerks alone. I hope this video has been helpful and inspiring. I have so many action steps. I think your book is so practical and so needed and so helpful, because if we're all aware of these things, they can't happen as much. So I want to thank you so much for writing it. I want to thank you for being on the channel, and thank you for all your time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks everyone for watching. If you feel brave enough, in the comments below, put what you think your jerk at work self might be. And also if you deal with a jerk at work, what kind of jerk are you dealing with? So you can put the category below. I'd love to read. I'm curious if there's patterns, if most people have free riders or micromanagers. I'm curious to see your patterns. I want to thank everyone for watching. If you like this video, give it a like or subscribe to us on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.
Thank you.
Are you living up to your full potential? Do you want more? I would love to help you. Get started with my free training and learn more about People School today. Visit scienceofpeople.com/P-School.